Brian Lehrer on WNYC. So what does the Trump anti-immigration campaign have to do with whether your kid in New York City or elsewhere can get to school? It turns out they're related. In December, the Trump administration announced it was rolling out new commercial driver's license restrictions in response to crashes involving what Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy called, quote, foreign drivers. Now, the federal government is threatening to withhold highway funds if states continue to issue commercial driver's licenses to non-citizen applicants. And New York State, in response to that threat, is changing who can drive trucks and buses to keep the federal funds coming. Important to say two things here. One, commercial drivers include school bus drivers, and this doesn't just apply to people here illegally. It's kicking legal immigrants out of those jobs, too. And by the way, there's already a nationwide school bus driver shortage, as some of you know. The order is being challenged in court here in New York, and you may have noticed that on Tuesday, during his State of the Union address, President Trump urged Congress to enact a version of this policy into law.
Many, if not most, illegal aliens do not speak English and cannot read even the most basic road signs as to direction, speed, danger, or location. That's why tonight I'm calling on Congress to pass what we will call the Delilah Law, barring any state from granting commercial driver's licenses to illegal aliens.
So that version would just target people here illegally. The law's namesake is Delilah Coleman, who was 5 years old in June 2024 when a tractor-trailer hit her family's stopped car. The truck was operated by an illegal alien, as the president called him in the speech, who was deported back to his home country of India in September, according to Yahoo News. Joining us now with her latest reporting is Jessica Gould, education reporter for WNYC and Gothamist, as many of you know. Hey, Jess, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
And let me clarify first that the State of the Union Delilah's Law passage that we played referred to, quote, illegal aliens being barred from commercial driver's licenses. But the policy as it stands is being applied to green card holders and others here legally, too, in New York. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that there are two things happening. One is this push for something called Delilah's Law, which, as you said, would be targeting unauthorized immigrants. And then there's what's been going on for some months now, which is this pause in New York on non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses. It's a mouthful to say, for immigrants who are here legally, as you pointed out, and have work authorization. And that's related to some new federal rules that are being challenged in court that would make it impossible for DACA recipients, for those who have been granted asylum or TPS and have work authorization, to drive trucks and school buses and MTA buses.
You're our education reporter. You did this story with two of our colleagues, Karen Yee, who reports on immigration, and Steve Nesson, who reports on transportation. So in your education lane on this, how many school bus drivers are licensed through this program for people here legally as immigrants with work authorization statewide, if you know?
Yeah, the head of the School Bus Contractors Association for New York said that he believes about 5% of state school bus drivers are non-domicile commercial driver's license holders. The head of the city's school bus department, for the Department of Education, who oversees school busing here in the city, was asked about this in a recent Zoom with parent leaders about whether this has affected city school bus drivers yet. And he said, this was 2 weeks ago, that this hadn't bubbled up to his desk yet on the city side. But we are hearing about it outside of the city on the state level. And it may well start trickling into the city as well.
I see. So even though this is playing out in courts, drivers around the state are already unable to renew their license. You spoke with Rosario Argueta, a visa holder from El Salvador who lost her job of 16 years as a school bus driver on Long Island earlier this month. What did she tell you about her experience?
Yeah, so this was how we learned that this pause on non-domicile CDLs in New York was in effect, was that we started hearing about it from drivers. So Rosario went to the DMV earlier this month on her birthday to renew her CDL as required, and she was told that she couldn't. She said that the DMV informed her they would not be able to renew her commercial driver's license because of these restrictions. And, as you pointed out, she's been driving a school bus for 16 years. Her safety record is strong. There are no problems. And she was gobsmacked and also very scared about how to make ends meet.
Why are they doing this? I don't know if this is in your lane, but the Trump people talk about, he certainly emphasized it in the State of the Union, violent criminals who are here illegally. This just seems like we want people from Central America, like that bus driver, out of the country, even if they've been here a long time and have work authorization and are law-abiding. What's going on?
Yeah, well, I think that it is making it harder for even legal immigrants to work and be in this country. And, the federal government would point to a string of various crashes that have involved immigrants at the wheel. But of course, we also know that there are many, many, many crashes on our roads with citizens, lifelong, American-born citizens at the wheel. And then this morning I was hearing on our own airwaves about a crash involving somebody working for ICE. But that's, the Trump administration says that it wants to get illegal immigrants or, unauthorized immigrants off the roads. But as we've talked about, this is for legal immigrants are being affected. Now, in New York, they threatened to withhold funding for highways. I think it was over $70 million of highway funding if the state didn't comply, citing what they said were problems in an audit of the CDL program, the non-domicile CDL program, that the state was granting these licenses beyond the point that the work authorization or the immigration status lasted. So if you had TPS through 2026, they were, granting licenses that were 8 years that went beyond that. And so they say that's why they needed to stop what they were doing.
Was there a shortage of school bus drivers already before this policy?
Yeah, I've been reporting for some time on problems in the school bus industry in New York City, and a lack of drivers is a big problem here. And we saw it actually just this week with the snows. If a driver couldn't get to work because they couldn't get out of their driveway, to get to work, then there were bus routes that just didn't run. Some of this driver shortage has to do with sort of trends in the large vehicle driving space. So after, during and after COVID, as so many of us began ordering things to our homes, our groceries, getting more things from Amazon, there's been a rush from people who used to drive school buses, it's hard work and difficult hours to work for places like Amazon or Fresh Direct or wherever for better pay or better hours. And that's left gaps in the school bus drivers' ranks. So and then the ripple effects are that, when a driver is sick or can't get to work, your route may be canceled or they may have to double up. And so you can't get your kid to school till hours later.
Right. So the only conclusion I can draw is they are so bent on getting people. Most of the people you reported here are from Latin America. They're so bent on getting people from Latin America out of the country that even the so-called good ones law-abiding, with work authorization, working in jobs where there's a shortage of labor. They're pushing them out with this policy. We've been focusing on school bus drivers, but I see bus drivers from the MTA are also affected. For your reporting, you spoke with a green card holder from the Dominican Republic who had been a bus driver for the MTA for 9 months. Her name is Unikel Mora, and here she is having lost her job.
I was a good driver. I don't drink. I don't smoke. So I'm behind the wheels, very conscious, very mindful. I'm respecting the law, the traffic law. So, that's hard when you're trying to do the right thing and this happens.
I obey the traffic laws, you're trying to do the right thing, and this happens. And I see you recently spoke with lawyers who told you this shouldn't have happened. So what's the latest on the legal front?
Yeah, well, in this particular case, she's a green card holder, and, the lawyers I've been talking to told me that she shouldn't, that even with these changes in the regulations, she should still be able to get her driver's license. So I'm going to be connecting her with one of the lawyers who reached out to me today to work with her on her case. But I think that it speaks to the amount of confusion there is as these regulations are posted and then challenged in court. And then most recently, just a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was a week ago, revised. I think that there's a lot of confusion out there.
So to be clear, this isn't a federal law or requirement, as I understand it. It's a threat to cut off federal funding for transportation to states. So that means Governor Hochul acquiesced to the threat, and she's getting criticism from people for sort of, obeying voluntarily rather than trying to continue to keep these people legally employed and then fighting in court and see what happens. How does she respond to the criticism?
Well, it's a little bit complicated because the state has got a specific order from the federal government to stop issuing these licenses because of this audit that found that they were, issuing them for too long or weren't backing up the issuances with enough paperwork. I think there are a lot of questions raised about how trustworthy this audit was and how thorough, but they were told by the federal government specifically that they had to stop because of these problems. But yeah, the Transportation Workers Union president, John Samuelson, was very angry and direct in his critique, saying that Kathy Hochul is sticking it to working people. And the TWU says other states have been able to, with the fact that this is being challenged in court, not comply. So it's definitely a difficult political issue to navigate.
Before you go, we've talked about these commercial driver's licenses with respect to school bus drivers and MTA bus drivers. I know it's also truck drivers, which is another thing that there's a shortage of. But a listener asks in a text, what about car service and taxi drivers? Do you know?
I don't know about that. I think there's a distinction about large vehicles in this and, for commercial driver's licenses. But I will admit that I have waded into the commercial driver's license world for the first time in recent weeks, and there's a lot to learn there.
Because you're really an education reporter.
Right.
But I will say that in the various stories I've read about this, I've not seen taxi drivers and car service drivers included. It does seem to be about the large vehicle commercial driver's licenses. Jessica Gould is the education reporter for WNYC and Gothamist. Thank you so much for sharing this story with us.
Thank you.
Brian Lehrer on WNYC. Much more to come.